Greetings, bloggers, vloggers, followers, and potters. Dustin here from Dustin's Dynasty here at you again this week with another edition of this week's vlog. So this week we're going to talk about transitions and change and how that can reflect on someone's day or make it more difficult for someone that is neurodiverse or autistic or ADHD and has issues with change and transition, and how that can also make things like getting things done throughout the course of the day more challenging or more difficult. So, one of the most key and common things is not so much with change. We know that change is a thing with autism. It's constantly evolving. It's always an issue. Change is continually a thing with autism that is related with autism. And one of the most commonly known things with autism is when something abruptly happens or abruptly is disrupted in a autistic person's day of thinking and thought process, that the changes on that changing from one thing to the next, short or little notice, can be quite challenging for an autistic person. And of that, I am no exception. In fact, yesterday, I had ordered dinner for delivery, and when it was not here yet, I got a phone call from a family member asking me to go for a walk. And of course, with a delivery on the way, I did not want to do that. It couldn't happen. And it just made me feel so bad in a way, but it also made me angry that, you're asking me to do this and you stopped. And I have to not think about something. And it's not about a love for food or a passion for food, but it's more about, a love or or just not able to say, okay, I'm focused on having dinner and nourishing myself and moving forward. But instead, you want me to go for a walk, and I have to put off eating something that I'm already looking forward to. And that can be, that is very challenging. It's very challenging. And then when that person isn't able to do that activity or transition because of your behavior, it makes you feel bad. You feel like crap. And I did for a while, and I had to recover from that. But another thing is I went through the evening last night, the time of transition. It was still a little challenging in some aspect, because when we're talking about transitions, we're not also talking about the abrupt changes. We're talking about moving from one thing to another. And if you're like me and have ADHD, and is known as AUDHD, or moving from one thing to another and trying to focus on something is just even more compromising and very complexing and cumbersome and difficult, just as much as or equal to transitioning from one thing to another. And I think a lot of times we fear change, but it's also the fact that when we're moving around and going from one thing to another, nothing ever really gets done. And that can be really challenging. It just really can. But change is always inevitable. And even more in this day and age, change is always going to be in the forefront of anything. There's always going to be a cancellation, it seems like, in some instance or another, or somebody's going to, that you value or may see as a valuable person in an employment capacity, may not be there anymore. And having the unknown is always a scary thing. Things not happening the way that you routinely expect is always a challenge. Having changes to things is always a hard thing to do. And it's hard to move from one thing to the next sometimes. Sometimes we just don't like it. And it's just we're afraid something's going to happen. Our mind overreacts. We constantly think something's wrong with us, and we fear maybe having to communicate with someone, or having to having to do something that is outside of our norm, that we normally cannot. We normally have a struggle or a trigger with. We may have past traumas that we may not want to. We may put off doing something because of a past trauma. or something similar to that issue that, it causes that more trauma. I think, I've experienced a lot of changes specifically in the last 2 to 3 years, and, it's not easy. I think 2020 was indeed the year of change, and finally in 2022, we're doing a lot better with that. But, things change, and there's a song I always like to say, I play all the time because everything changes, and it does. You're never guaranteed one thing from one day to the next. And that's the hard thing, I think, as being autistic, is we've endured so many changes, specifically within the past few years, that it's hard for us to have to settle our minds down and say, this is what life is and what life expects of us. I've been, I moved twice in a year, and that was a lot. And, it took a lot, even 2 years later, it's still taking a lot just to feel comfortable and happy. And I'm feeling better and I'm doing better. But it's just the fact that it takes a lot of time just to finally be settled and well. And it's taken that long just to get through all those transitions of 2020 and even transitions in 2021 as the world changed, and even as 2022 came around, as more restrictions due to the virus were revived, and they're even evolving even as recently. So I think, the world being in an evolving situation doesn't make transitions easier for anybody, let alone autistic people. And we must, it's extremely hard for when, going to shops and businesses in the area, and you can never be guaranteed of a business or a shop being open the same hours every week to week sometimes, or even day to day, because of the employment climate in the world, in the United States here today and across the world, because of the quiet quitting and all those related things. It's always difficult to know, to be guaranteed that things are always going to be the same, or even the supply and demand of inventory within a shop or a business. It's very challenging. It can also be very challenging in the way that, you make something for one of your special interests, and something that is beyond your control is added at, in a very short time, and you no sooner change it one time and something new to your interest has been added. So you got to redo everything again. And I think that builds a lot, of character, but it also builds a lot of, additional stressors that you may not want to have. It can be hard to accept, a transition and move from one thing to the next. It really can. I think, when you get into these puberty and school years, there's a lot of transition going on, not only within yourself, but also, within the school environment, and learning how that works. And, I think that's why we see a lot of this, a lot of these issues come about with the students today in schools, because of all the transitioning and all the changes that are going on with not only the body, but also the school climate and, the world climate as well. And I think it's just too much for everybody to handle, and as a result, there's a lot more youth that are experiencing a lot of not only challenges from mental health, but also if you have autism or are perceived to have autism and not yet have a diagnosis, whether or not you accept that fact, it can be even more challenging and make things more difficult for you to endure life. I think many people in autism who have experienced autism or acknowledged it in childhood had always had some sort of major roadblock with puberty and middle school or junior high, if it was for you. I think everybody just experienced a lot of challenge with that, and a lot of it did evolve the transitions. I think a lot of it evolved, not only do we have to change schedules a lot of times, but sometimes we may even change not only change classrooms more often, but like at this time of year specifically, I had a lot of issues with the fall sports seasons in schools because I did go to public schools, and I had a lot of challenges with the changing of the schedules and the addition of maybe extracurriculars like maybe a special treat on homecoming week or an assembly. So you think when you put all these transitions and everything together with all the noise, you think when you talk about, is such in a transition state of mind, you're thinking like if you have a day at school with a homecoming assembly and there's a lot of noise there, and then you have to pick an after school activity, not an after school, but maybe an after lunch activity that, over an already changing day. So all these things, are very challenging, in a sense. And, it's very hard to exist as an autistic person in a school climate that is just not built for us. So on a normal average day, it is built for us quite well. But on that few certain days when there's a lot of things that are changing to our schedule, and change is a challenge for us. And then you had the transitions and the different effects of those transitions. It's continually difficult to withstand and endure. It's just constant, and I think change is constant anymore. And it's hard to transition into one thing to another because you're never guaranteed one thing to the next anymore, and it's always difficult. So I just think that's just one thing. You have to constantly be more understanding of autistic people when it comes to transition and change. Please, if you can, let them know as soon as possible and help them. And because if I'm throwing if I'm in meltdown or overload or overworking or over excitement or more amplified as a result of my disagreement or my reaction to change, you're not going to be able to calm me down. And that a lot of times, many of my meltdowns are in environments outside of the four walls with my family or with people that are safe to me, where they did involve changes that I may not have agreed with, or changes that were not expected, and there were last minute changes. And as a result, they were always because of the way maybe the other person reacted, or maybe the way I reacted, and it became a negative energy feedback. Maybe in a sense, that would make me spiral. And when I'm in a spiraling mind of I'm not able to be adjusted. I need my quiet in my safe space, to calm down, to be able to relax and just breathe a little bit and just calm down, because there's no redirecting me out of that. When I'm in that phase, and I don't know, I think Tony Atwood quoted, I'm not 100% sure, but when you're in that phase and you just can't get out of it, there's just no getting out of it. And so I think the earlier that, and the best, and being told privately and in the smallest way you can, is the way it can help you. I wish I could come up with 1,000 other things, but everything is unique to each nature. Some things just can't be stopped, and you're going to know at the last minute, and you're just going to have to accept them for what they are. I wish I could say it was easier than done. I have for years and decades, I reacted very negatively to change. But anymore, I'm starting to embrace it more because I have accepted that I must be there for everybody else, and how I react and my reacting causes a chain reaction, or may cause a negative or similar energy in reaction to the other person. So I think that's important too, is not reacting to change in a way that causes like energy and causes a nice reaction to the other person. So with that being said, I want to thank you for listening this week to my vlog. If you haven't already, be sure to give it a like on this YouTube. And if you haven't subscribed, tap my notification bell for notifications, or subscribe to my channel, please do so. I am growing in subscribers, and I truly appreciate those that are subscribing to my channel. I also have platforms available, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Pinterest at Dustin's Dynasty, TikTok at Dustin's Dynasty AFC. We're slowly growing that. We're over 1,000 subscribers on TikTok, which I'm very pleased. And I'm on the web at dustinsdynastyusa.com, where I write 4 blogs a week. And all blogs and vlogs are transcoded into podcasts. And there's a bunch of those. And if you visit my like tree at Dustin's Dynasty, you'll find all the podcasts and other resources and links to other resources that are available that I have compiled over the years. So, and with that, I want to say thank you and be sure to have a good week, everyone. Take care and stay safe out there, my friends. We'll see you next week.